my job is to make sure that the event is organized well in terms of what's happening on the track. So things that we do are, for example, pair up drivers with instructors. And the rule that we have as an organization is that when you're beginning, and that is typically maybe the first couple of years, every time you're at the track, you have an instructor in your car. And the instructor's purpose is to talk you through the track, what you should be doing, get you comfortable out there. One of the things we'll talk about, kind of what DE is not, but this is not racing, it's not preparation for racing. I won't do the wrong slide, but it's a very controlled event. When you're out there on the track, it's very safe. People cannot even pass each other without somebody in front pointing out the window and saying, "Go around." So one of the concerns that I know a lot of people have when you first do this is there a lot of accidents or people touching, whatever. And the answer is it almost never happens, especially in the beginner run groups. Almost unheard of. When there are incidents, it's normally the guys in the race cars that get a little aggressive. So my point is it's a very, very safe event for both you and the cars. You can bring cars other than Porsches to the event. NER allows it, MCR, Residual Club allows it. But with the Porsches, I mean, they're built kind of for this type of thing. So there was also, I know, concern for a lot of people saying, this is my baby, I don't want to damage it, not from contacting other people, but just from using it in a high-performance setting. The truth is, the cars are made for it, normally they handle this very well. To get involved and come to the track, it's not a big deal. You don't need to buy a lot of equipment. It's basically get a helmet and then have your car tapped at one of the shops locally. Just look it over, make sure it's in good shape. You don't need any racing stuff. You don't need anything more than what's stock in the car. Brake pads, everything. One slides. Going over the so, but I guess my main point is that this doesn't have to be a big deal to come out and try it. Right? Some people may like it, some people they don't like it, but the truth is you don't have to spend a lot of money to come out and give it a shot.
Yeah. Dave, when you have the car checked out at a local shop, do you have a list of the approved locations that vehicles can be checked out? Okay.
A lot of the places, don't even charge for this. It's up to them, but a lot of them don't even charge. You go in there 30 or 45 minutes.
So on Porschenet.com, which is the Northeast Region website, if you go Activities, Driver Education, and then look over to the right, there'll be a click-on menu that is Tech Inspections.
Thank you.
In that page, there'll be a link to a list by city and state, or by state and city, of the authorized inspection stations. It includes independent shops, and it includes some dealers. Like Dave says, if all you have done is a tech inspection, may not be any charge or a minimal charge. A lot of us go, NER requires that your brakes be bled before every event and flushed once a year. So if you have the shop do that, they're obviously going to charge you for labor and materials for flushing or bleeding your brakes. And that's a pretty nominal charge to have somebody that's an expert at the cars look at your car and make sure it is in fact safe to use on the track. And I think we have 20 plus authorized inspection stations. If you happen to live up in New Hampshire and you're closer to some of the North Country shops, you can use any shop that's listed on the North Country website. Just please use our tech form. Don't download the tech form just yet. There'll be a new tech form posted in the next couple of weeks that says 2019, because there's been a couple of changes we'll talk about. Yeah.
I don't mean to jump in. Does the tech inspection happen before each race, or is it like a yearly thing?
NER and almost all the PCA regions require you to do it before every event.
Okay.
Typically 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks. I think it says 2 weeks in the paperwork, but 2 to 3 weeks before you should really be prepared to set it.
And the reason for that is if they find something wrong, you want them to have an opportunity to to, if necessary, get parts and fix it, instead of missing an event because something broke.
Don't wait for the last minute to have your tech inspection.
Especially the first.
Yeah.
First.
Because it could be something simple as a leaky strut, right? Type of thing. We want to get that taken care of before you get on the track and find out that you're using the strut. It's leaking even more, so it might take a little bit of time to get that.
I wanted just to, so it's correct what you said. So it's not a race.
Yes.
So it's an event. So,
Yeah, right.
and it's an important distinction, because it's non-competitive. It's out there for everyone to have fun. I said, you talk about point buys. I mean, people want to go fast. Some people are more aggressive than others, or want to go faster than others. And a lot of times, learning, there's always a learning curve on how fast you want to go. And learning what the car can do, which is what this is all about. Understanding what the car can do, and it translates to the street driving. Right? You get more comfortable in the car. You know what the brakes can do. How often does somebody on the street get into their ABS, right? Maybe on a snowy day, you feel the ABS going on. Or if you don't even have ABS, locking up the brakes. At the track, it's something that you can learn and experiment with. And you know how fast a car can stop, which again is not something you would normally learn or feel driving on the street.
So I wanted to ask about tire wear.
Yeah.
Is it significant?
So depending on what kind of tires you have. So if you had, let's say, so everyone driving in the lower run groups have street tires, right? No race tires are allowed. These are street tires. So you can buy any range of street tires. You can buy street tires that are quite grippy and they wear out quickly. And you can have all season type tires in your car and they'll last a lot longer. So, what's that? No snow.
So I'm just thinking about N-rated performance tires.
I'm sorry?
N-rated performance tires.
So what kind of rating? N-rated?
Which means
And simply
No, that's speed. Speed.
it's a Porsche approved.
Yeah. So again, there's a tread wear indicator on the tire. So for example, a 200 tread wear indicator is a sticky tire. A 400 is 500 are all season tires. What comes on the cars typically is going to be, let's say, 250, 300. So yeah, it's going to wear more than driving on the street, but it's also you certainly will easily get a couple seasons out of it. Let's say you come to the track 5 times a year, let's say. You're not going to wear them out in the year. I think it would be unusual to wear them out, especially in the lower run groups. As you're learning the cars, how hard you push them, you're probably not going to wear on the tires. It's much different than the street.
This might be going around in a circle here, but since you're on the topic of tires, I actually have the same tires used, so it's what we were talking about. I'm switching to slicks this year, but I've never done a PCA event, so I'll put in green, and you just said that you can't run.
You're the other Inter Series car?
Yes.
Todd's, is it?
Yes.
So if you would prefer, you didn't put slicks on the car, but I also know you have experience. We should probably just talk afterwards.
Okay.
So, in general, people come to the track in the green and yellow run groups, which are the beginning run groups. We prefer you don't have race tires on the car. We want you to experience what it feels like with street tires, which don't have as much grip, and will teach you to control the car better, as opposed to having really sticky tires where you can go faster and not even realize sometimes when you're starting to lose grip.
The tires will squeal.
And that-
Tires will squeal, the
Tires
sticky
don't.
tires don't.
Yeah,
Squeal.
street tires are more forgiving. And you'll hear them, whereas track tires are more, they're on and then very little off, either off. So it's either all there or not. Whereas street tires, you'll hear it.
Stan will talk about this when he talks in the safety section.
Well, I was just going to point out that if you have a question about the tires you're going to use, if you're thinking about using our compound tires, and you're in green or yellow, the lower run group, the decision maker is our chief instructors. And they will take into concern your experience level, whether the car maybe came OEM fitted with our compound tires. If it came from the factory with our compound tires, we kind of have to let you run the factory tires. But the decision point is with our chief instructors, either Dave Berman, Charlie Kinney, as South Coast was in a moment ago. We actually have 4 people that share the chief instructor.
So talking a little bit about what you'll learn on the track. So we have a little page of certain things, but basically the rule is we're trying to find a way around the track that's both quick and safe. Okay, so people talk about like racing lines and that kind of stuff, and the line, which is where you want to be on the track, coming into a turn, if you're on the left side of the road, the right side, where you make the turn. We have something called an apex, so you kind of get close to a curve at a certain point, and we call it tracking out, which is going back across the other side. So we talk through all that. So it's both safe and fast. And the idea is to be able to get some speed in the car, obviously, but doing it in a safe manner. So that's one of the main things. Is we talk about vision, looking ahead, looking down the track, as opposed to looking over the front of the car. Very important when you're driving. We talk about something called smoothness. So not jerking the wheel. Very small changes in the wheel, being very smooth going down there. And that's both a fast and a safe way around the track. Same thing with the controls, like the brakes and the gas. You don't stomp on the brake pedal, you don't stomp on the gas. We say on the gas pedal, you squeeze it. So everything is gradual to allow the tires and the suspension to catch up with the inputs that you're giving. So these are the types of things that we talk to as an instructor talking to a student. In the cars, we have headsets. So you'll put a headset, an earphone, and a mouthpiece in your helmet. We'll have one on our side so you can easily hear over the noise of the track. As I mentioned, there's no passing allowed on the track without giving a signal to the person in front of them. So it's important for you as a driver to recognize there's someone behind you, there's someone in front of you, how close you are. And again, the instructor's job is to make sure you're aware of all this. You typically have one of the mirrors set up so he can see, and we'll talk to you and say, hey, you notice there's someone behind you. It looks like he's maybe a little quicker than you. Why don't you let him pass on the left side? So it's very controlled and easy to have a conversation in the car with the driver instructor during these events. Talk about car capability. I mentioned that Kristen and I started out with an 83 911. That compared to a Cayman today has no horsepower. So you're on the track with lots of cars that have different capabilities. So it's recognizing which ones are faster, which ones handle better, which ones are heavier, which ones are lighter. Because obviously the idea is that you get a feel for your car and what your car can do in control the situation. And again, the idea is for everyone to have fun, right? And that's one of the things that we stress out there. Again, it's not a race. It's a learning environment for everybody. We don't tolerate aggressiveness on the track. For example, if we see somebody getting too close to somebody else, we'll go and talk to them. If they don't want to listen to us, we'll ask them to go home. So again, in terms of safety in your cars and you guys feeling comfortable, it's one of the main goals of our club, to make sure everyone's happy, having fun, and and again, we certainly think it applies to driving on the street. Again, understanding the capabilities, understanding what the car can do. It doesn't mean you're going to drive 100 miles an hour on the street, but it does mean that if some situation arises, you'll know how quickly your car can stop. You know if you can go around an accident if something's happening in front of you. So we think it makes you a better driver. And again, the speeds at a typical track, you're going to get up to 100 miles an hour on those tracks that we're on. So it's fun, it's exciting. It's something that you normally don't do on the street, hopefully.
Shouldn't
Some guy I work with sent me his little icon that actually has a picture of his speedometer doing 120 miles an hour. I'm like, really? I said, where are you doing this? He's like, I was in Chicago on the highway. I'm like, really? You can't go that fast. Anyways, okay, so I think that's my aspect. Any other questions about this? Everyone's going to be around. Chris and myself, and Ed, and Dennis from the other club, and Dave. Everyone's here to answer questions afterwards. So feel free to come up, talk about cars, talk about the events. Any questions you have, we're happy to talk to them.
Let me make one point though. You do not have to go 100 miles. Okay? We can use that as a number. If you're not comfortable going 100, you're comfortable with 80, perfect. You're pacing yourself as far as speed goes. We should talk about it. Eventually, you may want to get up to that 90 you don't have to go there. Next, I want to introduce Judy Mansing to talk about the social component of this, which is a very large component of the Judy is on the social committee.
Good morning. I see a whole slide. I am Judy Mansing. I am this year's chair for the social events at the track. And maybe that sounds like a bit of a misnomer to you, but it really is a very nice and integral part of the after-track events. So what we have at each of the events at the end of the day, and this is only at the end of the day, is a wine and beer time, soda, water, time to get together and brag a little bit about what the day was like. Really, it's a chance to get to know people other than the people that are right next to you. And at some of the events, those being the ones at Thompson, Palmer, Watkins Glen, we also do a dinner one of the evenings at the track. Additionally, at two of the tracks, at Watkins Glen and at Montreal in Canada, because those are further away, some people like to bring their families or their significant other with them. And sometimes you have a non-participating partner who says, really? What am I going to do there all day? At those two tracks in particular, there are lots of off-track events. At Watkins Glen, as an example, you're very close to the Corning Glass Museum, which is a fantastic place to spend a good part of the day. Watkins Glen is also in the middle of the Finger Lakes wine area, so there are lots of wineries that somebody can visit. There's biking, there's hiking. The same is true at Montreal. Montreal has a slew of activities in the area for children. So it's a nice place, if you're thinking of a little mini vacation for your family, to include. If you have questions about that aspect of it, you can reach out to me by email. I'm happy to put you or whoever is asking about it in contact with a list of places that I know have traditionally been fun. I am a non-driver. I am at every event that Ed goes to. And it started out.
I need somebody to change.
It
the
started
tires.
out because he's not joking. It started out really because we've done so many things in our lives as a team. It seemed like a natural fit. I have made so many track friends that the idea for me of not being there, I would really miss it. So I encourage you, if it's something that you think you want to bring somebody with, do it. They will likely find out that it's a really fun time. The people who are at the track, both participating drivers and non-drivers, are very friendly. If you decide to do this, you're going to have a great time.
Let me quickly go over and tell you what DE is not. It is not racing, not even close to racing. It's not preparation for racing. Two very different groups. There are no times recorded, no awards, and no prizes presented. The reward is internal. How well did I do on the track? How well did I do with my car? You will see your growth from day to day. That's the reward. It's not dangerous, but it's serious. You have to be aware that you're track between 20 and 30 other cars. You learn a certain respect of who's on the track with you. Respect each other. But the problem is it can be addictive. You really get into this. I want to introduce Stan. Stan is our registrar and safety chair.
Good morning. So, like Ed says, I'm the DE Registrar and Safety Chair. I'm the person that every one of you who actually does a DE event at some point will have an email exchange or a phone exchange so that you can get questions answered as regards anyone in the individual event. So, most of you will go into the green and the yellow run group. That's our green beginners and yellow novices. You'll have an instructor in the car with you anytime you're actually on the track. You'll pay about $215 a day to run in green and yellow with us, and that's actually more than any of the other drivers are going to pay. The solo drivers pay a little less, so that's a target. If you motor to solo, you save a little money. The instructors pay quite a bit less, and what we're doing basically is we're using money from the green and yellow registration fees to supplement what we do or don't get from the instructors, because they're doing double duty. An instructor with one student is going to be on the track every time you're on the track, and on the track every time the instructor group is on the track. And some of them will take advanced drivers out and go out with them. So an instructor might be on the track almost every run some days. So that's pretty tiring. As was mentioned before, every event, you have to have a pre-event track inspection done 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. And there's a list of people that we have that can do that. At the track, once you get there, you'll unload your car. You'll put your numbers on the car, which you must provide yourself. We do not provide numbers for you. And you'll take your car and your helmet and your tech inspection form to the daily track inspection area, and they will look at your car. They're going to look at a number of things that we check every morning at the track. How good are your brake pads? Does it look like there's any problem with your rotors, or you've got a cracked rotor or something like that? We're going to check the torque on your lug nuts. If you bring a non-Porsche, it might be helpful if you brought the socket that goes to your lugs, because unless it's the same size, a 19 mil that Porsche uses, we may not have the socket handy. So
Does that include the center lock wheels as well?
So the center lock wheels, we'll look and make sure that the lock is engaged. We're not going to torque them for you.
Okay.
That's up to you. If you have a car to which the center lock recall applies, have in your kit the letter saying that that's been taken care of for your car. We ask for it at random. And probably once we've seen it from you, we won't ask you again. Right? There's a driver's meeting every morning. Doesn't apply to you folks, but we are doing what we call an online driver's meeting pack. So if you're a solo driver, you read this thing, you fill out the front sheet, you put an answer to a question on it, you turn that in, and that means when you go to the driver's meeting, you're only there for 5 to 10 minutes. And then if you didn't do that, or if you're green and yellow, you're there for a little more extensive driver meeting, and then green and yellow go to a novice meeting. And I think some of this has been covered. We'll mention that, because I haven't heard it said yet, our schedules typically have 5 run groups. We'll run green by themselves, that's our beginners. We'll run yellow and blue together, yellow being instructed, blue being our lowest solo group. The reason we run those together is because the pace of those 2 groups is very similar. Also gives our new solo drivers an opportunity to drive solo with a group they've been running in, so they're pretty familiar with it. And then we have white drives by themselves, black by themselves, that's our advanced drivers, and red, the instructors by themselves, so it's a total of 5. So each run group, we run them in sets. Each run group will be on the track 4 times for 20 to 30 minutes per time, depending upon the track. We will occasionally, under certain circumstances, and sometimes in real time, combine different groups. Like we might, if we're getting to the end of the day and the 3rd day, and a lot of people have already left because they got to book home Sunday afternoon to be home for work on Monday, we may start combining red and black, or even red, black, and white, and run the advanced drivers as a simple group. Okay, we mentioned the socials. Okay, so there are some things you have to have to do DDs. First off, you have to be 18 years of age or older with a current driver's license. Doesn't have to be Massachusetts, I don't care, but you have to have a current driver's license. You have to be a member of PCA or another recognized car club, like the BMW CCA, or the Audi Club, or Audi Northeast. The reason that we require that, and most of our friends in BMW and so on also require a similar thing, is we have to buy insurance for these track events. Now, as you might imagine, if I've got 150 plus drivers, I only pay PCA National $600 for the insurance policy. If I had to buy that without some kind of support from PCA, who knows how many $1,000 that insurance policy would cost. PCA membership dues help to fund our capability to buy the insurance that cheaply. So if I get somebody from BMW CCA and want them to be a dues-paying member of BMW, because I'll go to a BMW event and they have the same policy. So that's why we require you to be a member of the car club. I've had this question already today. What if I and my significant other, or I and a friend of mine, both want to start? We've never done this before. We both want to go to Thompson, and we want to use my car. In most cases, we can handle that by one of a couple of methods. We might put one of the drivers in yellow. So one's in green, one's in yellow. They both get a full set of runs. We might, in some circumstances, especially if neither driver is doing well enough to be in yellow with an instructor, let the two drivers have a single registration. Both have to register, one person pays, and they share the registration. So four runs a day, each gets two. Or two-day event, one drives on Saturday, one drives on Sunday, that kind of thing. But we will find a way to accommodate shared cars by people who are in the same country. Okay, it's already been mentioned, you can drive your Porsche. Almost any Porsche is acceptable, except the tractor, because they don't have seat belts. That's not the only reason you don't have a tractor. Anyway, so, or any, a non-Porsche, as long as it passes the tech inspection. There's quite a lot of details in the tech inspection section of our website that you can look at and see if there's anything tweaky about your car that might need to be done. And you can go to whoever you select to do the tech inspection, and maybe if you've never done this, and especially if you have an older car, have them take a look at it ahead of time and let you know, oh, this needs to be adjusted. Some really old Porsches may need some changes to the seatbelt mounting locations, those kinds of things. The tech inspection folks, especially the independent shops, can help you with that kind of stuff. You can use, unless the tracks don't allow it, and there's a couple of tracks with tweaky rules about cabriolets, you can use a cabriolet. Most of the tracks will accept the newer Porsche cabriolets with the pop-up rollover protection. There are a couple that will not, and you have to have fixed rollover protection, which, depending upon how much you love your car to be in stock shape, maybe means that you don't go to those tracks. Tracks have additional requirements. Most of the tracks have some kind of noise level requirement, which, unless you have a modified car, if you have a stock Porsche, almost all the stock Porsches will meet the noise level requirements. If you have one with the cutout, or the button you push on the dash to make it sound really cool, you might not want to push that button on the track. The DB requirements are on our website, so you can look at that and see what the requirements are. If the shop you go to doesn't have the capability to measure your noise level, there are some shops around that do. And most of the tracks that have the lower requirements are very strict about it. The reason is because the surrounding communities come down on them like a ton of bricks and sometimes bring legal action against them, and they run the risk of getting shut down, and we won't be able to run events there. Great.
The Canadian tracks in particular are very strict on them, and they will actually measure the noise level. So just be aware going in. You're not going to get away with it.
Palmer's pretty strict.
Yeah.
Lime Rock.
Lime Rock is strict. Tamworth is
Tamworth,
strict. Calabogie checks it before you go on the track, but the limit's not that low. And Vermont up above Montreal is strict. Yeah.
Pretty much any stock exhaust is going to be well within the limit.
Yes, that's correct. And you get an opportunity to fix it, but if you're concerned, and there's a write-up on our website about noise limits that kind of describes what's likely to be okay. Right. Shall we turn this over to Tony?
Absolutely.
Hello again.
Wow. Tag team.
All right. Thank you. So I'm just going to be giving kind of a basic safety overview. You'll quickly learn that there is kind of a lot going on safety-wise, and truthfully, it's not all totally relevant to you right now. So I'm going to try and just give you an idea of the basics, what you might want to use down the road, and kind of what's out there. Then Stan and I are going to then go into a new rule that PCA has come up with this year involving comms devices. So that name is new for you. I'll definitely let you know what that is, and we'll talk about kind of what that means for you going forward and really how it applies to you. So starting out with safety gear, the big thing to know about, and the first thing you'll see, is helmets. That's pretty much the basics. That's what you'll need to get onto the track for the first time. In terms of what's out there, there are so many different options, and you can spend as little as $150 to $5,000 for a super light F1 certified helmet. We typically recommend starting out on the entry-level side of things. Usually around $250, $300 is going to get you something pretty basic or pretty great in terms of getting you on track. In terms of safety ratings, that's the only thing that you really need to look out for. So the helmets in our world for track driving are Snell rated, specifically Snell Automotive. So you'll see when inside the helmet, underneath the padding, it'll say SA and then a year. Helmets they do come out with a new rating every 5 years, so the next one is going to be 2020. When they come out with a helmet that is rated for, let's say, 2020, it has a 10-year life. So that'll be good until the end of the 30-30 race season. So currently we're operating off of the 2015 rating. So if you were to buy a helmet today, it would be a Snell Automotive 2015. And that would get you going until the end of the 2025 driving season. Tons of time. So don't let the fact that we are right on the rollover of the next certification slow you down or stop you from getting a helmet. Most people, their first helmet, they totally trash, and it gets sweaty and gross, and 6 years with the helmet is a long time. So I definitely wouldn't recommend waiting. We're just talking helmets.
Awesome.
Yeah, so in terms of helmet care, it's pretty hard to mess up a helmet, but there are a couple things to really know. They're only designed for one major impact, so that's a big difference between motorcycle rated stuff and automotive stuff. Motorcycle stuff can handle a couple little spills. The automotive helmet, in theory, is only designed to protect your head once. And that can, in theory, mean if I took the helmet and dropped it from here, or whether you're actually in an accident and the helmet does hit something. So in terms of care, the one thing we always say is that when you get off the track at the end of the day and you're hot and sweaty, don't put your helmet on your roof. It happens. You see it all the time, and it's the perfect Instagram photo, but then you get back in your car and you drive away and the helmet goes in the ground. So we definitely like to stop that from happening. Besides that, before we move on from helmets, any questions about helmets?
Talk about stand motorcycle helmets.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's something that comes up.
Northeast
every
region does allow, in addition to the SA rated, we do allow motorcycle helmets, and we do allow open face helmets. Though we recommend an SA closed face helmet. It gives you additional protection, and the other big difference is the SA automotive rated helmets have additional fire protection that the motorcycle helmets don't.
And that definitely is, I think, more unique to PCA specifically. I know a lot of car clubs do not allow motorcycle helmets. In general, when buying your first helmet, getting an open face, one that, on that top row there that just doesn't have anything in front of your face, it seems really attractive because they are cooler. You don't feel quite as enclosed. we typically discourage them. One, there definitely is a safety advantage to having something in front of your face. Two, a lot of clubs or tracks do require the closed face helmet. So if you're looking to kind of just get a helmet that's going to cover you from all of the events, getting something like a traditional closed face and automotive rated one, I think would be the way to go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask sort of about the open versus closed space. I have an essay in 2015 that's open and choose a autocross.
Yeah,
It's also the cheapest one on Amazon, so
right.
they want to upgrade, you know.
And for autocross, that's awesome. And from what it sounds like for PCA, that wouldn't be an issue with you running with this club. What I would just recommend is checking with, just double check any event you're going to that's outside of the PCA, or if it's with a different region of PCA, the new track. Just make sure that you can run that. At some point, if you are into this as a sport, you're going to come across an opportunity or a chance where you'll need a full face.
I had that chance. I was at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and there's always particles, little pieces of rubber all over the track. Well, a piece of rubber came in right here. I had the shield down, but if I didn't have it down, I would have a patch. So don't be foolish. Get something that has full face protection.
You just reminded me of another really great thing to talk about. So one thing is visors, and with your helmet, for most of you that are getting a full face helmet, it is going to have a visor. Visors are really great for protection. They're really annoying for heat. So it's kind of this, we hear both sides of it. Do you run your visor? Do you not run your visor? Should I run my visor up? The big thing to know is that if you are running in your factory car with a 3-point harness, like it's just your, the car that you rolled out from the showroom, if you are going to run without a visor, you want to remove it from the helmet. You don't want to have it lifted up. The big risk is that if your airbag goes off, it can actually catch the visor, throw your head back, and create a really nasty scene there. So if your club does allow you to run without a visor, pull it off your helmet. I would honestly do it even if you have harnesses, but if you have harnesses, it's not quite as relevant. Like you said, I've also been hit with, I was not running with the visor, and I was hit here with a piece of rubber in a closed roof car, and it scared the crap out of me, and I've run a visor ever since. So not a bad thing, especially when you're starting out, to just get used to what a full face helmet is like, get used to running your visor down. If you don't know otherwise, it's kind of just a good way to start good habits now.
Yeah. I would also say too, just about open face helmets, not that many of you would be in like a race car without an airbag, but if you're in a car that has a racing steering wheel, no airbag, you can imagine it's much more dangerous to run an open face helmet, have any sort of protection of you kissing that steering wheel in a frontal crash. So that's a really, just to what Cody said, yes, you can use them, but there are so many reasons that a full face is really going to keep you a lot more protected.
So just out of curiosity, an airbag with a helmet is totally safe?
Totally cool. Yeah. It's great. It's better than not having it. Yeah, no, it's great. If you have a steering wheel without an airbag, for example, that's when like the harnesses become so much more relevant. But yeah, totally.
Let me interject one thing. 2010s are still allowed right now. Think about it though, if you think you're getting a really good deal on a 2010 helmet, it's only good for 20 years. 2019 and 2020, and then you got to buy one in. So if you get an opportunity to buy a 2010, it better be a really good deal.
Cody, can you talk about helmet fit?
Yeah, love to.
Because that's a real issue. This is part of the problem with buying a helmet online.
Yeah. So helmet, and thank you. It's so hard to buy a helmet online. It's like buying like that perfect pair of jeans. And if any of you have had like ski boots, anything like that, basically what we're looking for helmet fitment is as tight as that you can comfortably wear. There definitely is a too tight, and you'll know it when you feel it. Kind of major things really have to do with how the helmet is fitting the upper part of your head and the cheeks. So those are the two main things to look out for. Specifically, you want kind of like a nice uniform feeling around the top. Want to make sure there isn't any extra space hanging out up top. That's usually not the case, but it should feel nice and snug up top. The area to look out for, if you're going to have issues with the helmet, it is the forehead. So if you're feeling anything funky here, any pressure, it's probably the wrong size. And that's the one area, even on helmets that have like interchangeable cheek pads and you can even tailor the fit, if up here does not feel right, it's probably the wrong size or the wrong helmet for you. Wear it for a couple of minutes and you'll know. The final thing in terms of after you move on up here, down below, nice puffy cheeks. You want to feel like you're getting a ton of pressure in your cheeks. Again, like if you're really going to chop off the inside, there is too much, but it should feel really snug. You don't want to be able to basically move the helmet without moving. When you move that helmet, you want to feel like your skin is being pulled in all sorts of crazy directions. Anything else on equipment? Or
No, that covers it.
Yeah.
Visor care,
Sure.
washing, protection, and so on.
It's a brand specific thing. Some helmets like Stilo, there is like only one cleaner that you can use, and literally anything else is going to cause them to crack. In general, I would look at whoever you buy the helmet from. I would just look at what they recommend. You will see products that we do sell a generic visor cleaner that would work for a lot of the stuff that's over there. But going to the manufacturer, some will say, I think at minimum for any helmet out there, a wet microfiber with just water, clean microfiber is always going to be okay. In terms of the solvent, usually you don't even need a solvent unless you get it gets really gross.
No, Windex is usually a no-no. Anything with ammonia in it is usually causes problems. So, like I said, water, microfiber, it's a good one.
Any other questions before we move on?
Shoes and gloves.
You want to tap into shoes and
Sure.
gloves?
Yeah. So the helmets, obviously, like Cody said, that's no matter what, you're going to need that. Then, as you progress along, you probably come to the point where you say, man, I need a better grip on the wheel, how I'm shifting. Your hands will sweat, all sorts of factors that adding a glove seems to be the sort of the next thing that people will do. So we have all sorts of different levels and colors of gloves. But really, like I said, it's going to give you consistent grip on the steering wheel. Just like anything else, when you're really working that wheel, you may not be slipping all over the place, but it definitely inspires confidence when you have that nice grippy surface on your palm, and there's no slippage at all. It also allows you to grip the steering wheel more comfortably. You don't have to have this death grip on it with bare hands. You can just relax your hands, and you have that grip. So gloves are a huge improvement, I would say, for a lot of people. And one other thing about them that I like with a bright glove like this or red or anything, it makes your hands very visible. So you'll I don't know if you've gone through it yet, but the point buy system is a very widely used thing at track days. Pitting in, you're using hand signals to indicate to the cars behind you you're pitting in. So when you do that, sure, a bare hand, you'll probably see it just fine, but it doesn't hurt to have something like this. You're very, very visible. I don't think that's something to read into as like your primary reason, but it's
Fit should be more important.
exactly. So just like the helmets, fitment, we have all the sizes and everything, and you want it tight but not baggy on your hands type of thing. So
It's part of the.
it doesn't hurt to look good.
They do look cool. They feel cool. I think that Brady and I kind of share the same thought with gloves and shoes, and you'll find with a lot of this stuff is that you don't need it right now. You very quickly might want gloves and shoes, and that probably is the thing you'll want after your first event. It doesn't take much to realize that as you did your first autocross, you love it right away. But it's just kind of like on the radar. That's probably what you will want next.
Yeah,
and
progression.
And when it's really cool when you actually put on your gloves and you're holding your wheel. It does add a lot to the experience.
And like I said, I think one thing I notice on the back end is the grip you have to have on the wheel and whatever that you're controlling it's just a lot more relaxed. You sort of inadvertently realize halfway through your first session out there with bare hands that you're like, wow, I am like so gripping the steering wheel to the point where it's a little too much. So yeah, gloves are going to be a good addition there. Then I guess shoes.
So yeah,
next part of that.
I love talking about shoes, mainly because you don't necessarily need driving shoes. I actually still don't use driving shoes. Really, the most important thing is finding a pair of shoes that you can comfortably modulate the pedals. There are a couple do's and don'ts, which we'll talk about really quickly. If you can picture your basic forward dress loafer that has like the sides that come off, like an inch off of the actual base of the shoe, you want to avoid something like that. Anything that could get caught on the pedals, especially if you're driving a manual, if they're big clogs, if they're hiking boots, if they feel clunky, you want to avoid them. So something with a sleek profile, it could be a Puma, it could be a running shoe. You'll find most of the driving shoes are really slim, really thin soles that are great for feedback. And it is a great way to improve the pedal feel for sure. And if you are driving a manual, I would consider it a lot sooner than later. But the big things are, I find, is just feeling comfortable in what you're in.
Yeah, like you said, nothing clunky.
Yeah.
A pair of sneakers is like athletic sneakers is the perfect thing, I think, for a lot of
And you did just transition. I mean, you were running sneakers like me for years.
Yep.
Did you get your first pair of shoes?
Yeah, I switched over to a driving shoe, and those are like, just to give you a quick example, the basic features. The heel is rolled, so it allows you to articulate on the pedal like that, no matter if you're on the brake or the throttle. Like Cody said, they're very narrow. They tend to be a lot more slim, so that you're just not getting jumbled up on the pedals. And so just like any of this stuff, it's very specifically made for the task at hand. But it's not to think that, oh, I need to go get shoes and gloves right now to do my first event. It's one of those things that have it on your radar.
Would you ever go back?
No. That being said, yeah, I would not. Once you experience the improvement, it's I would say it's a must-have. But it's almost like I didn't know what I was missing before, so it wasn't really anything I needed them.
That said, if you're looking down at your shoes and you know you don't have what it takes, if you know you're not happy with what you have and you think you are going to get into this, it is a great time to pick up a cheap set.
Yeah, they start around $99, so not too crazy.
Moving on to seats and harnesses. This is a great topic for Porsches because unfortunately there's a lot going on here, and this year is very special because there are new rules. It's great. Really quick, I guess, should we just go over?
So, kind of let's take a poll. How many of you here are going to potentially bring a car to the track that has seats and harnesses on
I hope everybody has seats.
Yeah.
Non-stop seats.
Proper race seats that accommodate the installation of multi-point harnesses. Okay, so the number is fairly small. Jerome, I know you'll have no problem with the rule. You'll understand what we're trying to say. For the couple of you that may do that, there's a slide in here with a bunch of red print on it that says, this is what you must do, this is what you must not do, this is what we will do, this is what we won't do. Probably the key is, if you have seats and harnesses, so that you're strapped in, bolt upright, whether you have airbags or not, you must use a head and neck restraint system starting this year in 2019. It can be a Hans device, which is a specific manufacturer, and you'll see several examples around here. But it must be an approved head and neck restraint system that you use. There are several different ones that are available. There's some that can be used with three-point harnesses. We have some drivers that have been doing that for a couple of years. As long as they're approved, you can use them, but they are required. Okay. What happens if you don't have a head and neck restraint system and you come to the track with seats and harnesses installed in the car? We won't let you drive unless you have functioning three-point seat belts and use them. In other words, you can't drive in a PCA event, PCA HPDE event, with seats and harnesses without a head and neck restraint system. So you're back down to using the three-point seat belts. You do not have to have stock seats to use the three-point seat belts, but the seat belt has to fit in the same functioning manner that the stock seats and three-point belts fit. In other words, that lap belt has got to go across your pelvic area and be tight on that. Can't go over the bolsters of the race seat and be off of your body. It has to be nice and tight like it's supposed to be. And the shoulder harness has to go across your shoulder and fit properly. Yes?
For those of us who have harnesses and aftermarket seats.
Say again?
For those of us who have harnesses and aftermarket seats.
Yep.
The instructor will provide his own Hans, or do we have to provide?
That's correct. You do not have to provide a Hans for your instructor. And if you're going to ride with your instructor and he has seats and harnesses and no three-point belts, you either bring your own Hans or you can't ride with him.
Or you borrow one from somebody.
Yeah, or you can borrow. Yeah, a Hans is something unlike a helmet, which I would never borrow a helmet, but especially if it's been used once or more. You can borrow a Hans device from somebody. There are You can find ones that don't fit right to your body because there is more than one size. But in general, you'll probably be able to find somebody that's got one that will fit.
I was going to say that's another
The
important
anchor's
point.
gonna
It's like
be-
you can't just take it and drop it on someone else's shoulders. They're going to need the anchor hardware installed on their helmet. So it's a bit more, but yeah, absolutely
So-
true. Like fitness wise,
And from the anchor point of view, if you have a helmet that's 2010 or newer, it should be set up, or you should be able to go to somebody like HMS and have them put the proper anchor posts on your helmet. And different head and neck restraint systems have different anchor posts. So that's something else to think about.
not all universal.
Right, they're not universal, they're not common. It's not like a seat belt, a 3-point belt. That's a standard thing across all different manufacturers. Yes.
So,
One of the better ones, the Hans, the new one, the SHR.
Yeah, so the SHR, I mean, you're looking anywhere between mid 400s, I would say. If you need posts, that's an extra 55 or so. So it usually does bump it up to about $500. I guess just to talk about quickly, since we are talking about Hans devices, it does come up quite often, which is, what does it take to take my factory Porsche to the level where I am using harnesses and a Hans device? For a lot of us starting out, we are doing this in our factory cars with just our 3-point harnesses. There's nothing modified about it. Porsches are unique in the sense that they do require a decent bit of modification in order to get a proper harness system set up in it. One thing you hear a lot of talk about are seats. Most of the factory Porsche seats do not work with harnesses, so that would require putting a different set of seats in there. Once you have the different set of seats, you can run your factory 3-point harness, but you have to set it up properly. Just because you have an aftermarket seat and you have the factory 3-point in the car doesn't mean it all plays nicely. And we can talk about what it would take to make that work, but just know that it does take a little bit. Beyond the seat itself, you would need the harnesses. Porsches also don't have a great place to mount them, so that typically does require a harness bar or a half roll cage of some kind. All said and done, in order to kind of get a seat safety set up with belts in a Porsche, it is a big undertaking.
It might be a $3,000 or $4,000 undertaking realistically. So it's just good to know that rough number.
The pieces involved.
Yeah. The other thing is, there are some later model Porsches that Porsche was nice enough to set up so that you can use a Schroth 4-point system. Those specific models, only those specific models, can use the Schroth 4-point, and they are listed on our website in the tech inspection. And the reason you can use those is because, unlike most of our stock Porsche seats, which have no holes in the back, in the backrest, these come with holes to route the harness, the shoulder harnesses. And there are only specific items.
Max, I have a question, Stan. This is sort of for you. So that belt that he's referring to, it sort of relies on the Porsche carbon bucket seat, which many of you might be familiar with, which comes stock in GT4 or GT3, several other models. If someone were to buy those seats and put them in their car, those seats don't come in that car normally. Would that be acceptable for you guys?
I would want the tech inspection station to look at it and make absolutely sure that the fit is the same as it would be with those seats in the original car.
Yeah, all the geometry is the same.
So if I took Cayman GT4 seats and put it in my 06 Cayman S, the bolt in, what I don't know is if all the hookup points for the 4 points are in an 06 that are in a late model Cayman GT4.
Yeah, so that's sort of a
case-by-case
basis.
Yeah. Question? And that's also true, there are certain other cars, and there's lists on the Schroth website, and I don't know if you guys have a link to it. There are other makes and models of cars that can use the 4-point system from Schroth, and again, that should follow the same rule. It should be the listed make and model. Make sure that it's installed correctly. I got a guy at Palmer who showed up with 4 points and didn't realize that he was supposed to cross them and route them a certain way to keep the shoulder harnesses from falling off your shoulders. So when I told him, no, you've got to take those out and put them back in right, or you're not going to have an instructor, kind of upset. He said, but I put them in right. He did. Here's the document, go do it right.
With all that, you might ask yourself, why would we go to all this trouble? And the answer is obviously pretty obvious. The control that you will get over your car is so dramatically improved. You can think about with the stock seats, you're sliding a bit. You're sort of having to brace your body weight. And what this does is it totally locks you to the car so that you're feeling every single thing the chassis is doing. And most people find a lot of speed that way. So we had a question.
I know that the harness, they time out.
Yes.
And I just noticed that the seats do too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't concern yourself with, my car's a 2011, so I'm assuming the seats, it's a race car.
So is it done for the stock seats in it that came with the car?
I'm in an inner series car.
Say that again?
I'm in this inner series Cayman.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're probably.
So they retire all of a sudden, they look like.
So,
Stan, PCA doesn't have any
right,
requirement on seats.
right. PCA, and I don't know if club racing does or not, but the DE program does not have a seat expiration requirement. They do for the harnesses, they do for your Hans, like the strap's supposed to be replaced every once in a while. I forget.
5 years.
5 years, something like that, which reminds me, I probably need But, yeah, so go by what the tech form and the tech inspection pages on our website say. And those, I haven't finished updating those for this year because it changes in 2019, but I should have that done in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Is there an issue with taking out the stock seat and putting the race seat in with the electronics now?
Can be, absolutely. So it depends on how old your vehicle is. If, let's take like a 991 or like a 2016 Carrera. They have airbags, map occupancy sensors. Sometimes they have heated seats, ventilation, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So when you pull the factory seats out, the car does not
Flips out, yeah.
Under 06 Cayman mine has those same issues.
Yeah, there are different ways to go about it. There are emulators. There are ways you can fool the car into thinking that it has everything. It doesn't have everything. It becomes an issue more often than not with the state inspection if you are trying to keep the car road legal. Although some people just don't like to look at lights. The biggest thing is kind of just understanding what the potential risks are. When you pull the factory seat out of the car, you are losing, the side airbags that are right here. There are different schools of thoughts of what happens to your factory airbag system when one airbag is missing. Some people, with the emulator, so for example, you plug something in and the car says, oh, I do have all my airbags, everything is fine. I didn't develop that personally, so I can't say whether the car is then going to think all the airbags are cool and they're all going to fire as they will. That's something where you really need to do your homework and make sure that you're getting the right hardware. Because there's a chance that then none of the airbags work. If you're running a 3-point harness, that's really bad.
Yes. And if you're using the car for pre-dam track, you should not be using your harnesses on the street unless it has a specific disconnect, because the EMTs will look in there if they need to get you out of the car. If it's a regular race harness with a flip method or the latch system, you're not supposed to use that because not all EMTs know how to release things. There are some that have a big red button on it that pops the harnesses. That you can use. But don't use your harnesses on the street unless they're approved for use on the street.
Harness questions or anything else before we to kind of
Well, yeah, the cage and the harness bar is kind of part of that. Yeah, so fire extinguishers, brackets. This is another area that we do. We do everything from handheld fire extinguishers, your dry chemical kind that you're probably familiar with, all the way to pre-advanced suppression systems, which are it's a trigger and all the nozzles spray at one moment to extinguish a much larger fire in the car. Those are usually in race cars. However, we've seen a lot more folks now transitioning. If they're building this car up as a pretty serious track car, it's not unlikely to have a full system in the car. And obviously, fire is one of those things. It's a hazard in motorsports, and it's what it is. So we've got to deal with it.
Some PCA regions do require you to have a fire extinguisher, even on the DE level. Starting out, every region is
Usually your second time.
after this, yeah, right.
So
So
first time on the track, you don't know if you really want to do this. It's like, I want to try it. You know, we're not going to ask you to modify or extinguisher. But after, you know, if you come the second time, yeah, you can modify or extinguisher the front rail, the seat, the side of it. It's real simple. It's very easy.
That's a non-country Northeast region, fire extinguisher is optional, recommended, not optional. What is the requirement?
it's a great question.
It's on our website, the short version is metal.
We sell it's a company called Brake Krause, which you might become familiar with. They're very huge in Porsche aftermarket mounts and brackets of all sorts, really high quality. So Brake Krause makes a fire extinguisher bracket. It's about $80, $80 to $100. Fire extinguisher itself is another $40. So
direct bolt in,
$140.
No
Yeah,
drilling,
it fits your factory seats, and it, like Cody said, it goes under the passenger seat typically, so it's not really in the way. And it's one of those things you hope you never have to use it, but you're certainly glad you have it on board if you do.
Yeah.
So.
They even make one for a Porsche Cayenne, which I have one in my Cayenne because I use that vehicle to go out and retrieve cars and so on and so on. So it's nice to have a fire extinguisher.
I think that just about wraps up safety. Any questions before we sign off here? We will definitely be around after the event, so we can talk rules, products.
Yep. Well, helmets is a popular thing, so to find Cody and I, we will be in this room to help you. But yeah, please use this as a resource. Like I said, we love this stuff. It really makes us happy to see so many newcomers going to the track and having an interest in this. So.
Thanks for coming. We love having you here. So.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a sheet in here under all the red text that talks in detail about the cons and harnesses for 2019. Since there's not a lot of people that sound like they're going to start off doing this, if you have any questions, come see me afterwards rather than using it for time. Okay, so I want to spend just a couple minutes talking about registration and payment. With the Northeast region, when you go into clubregistration.net and you sign up for an event, as soon as you know you actually want to go to the event, please pay. The reason I say that is, especially for green and yellow, which are instructed run groups, I can only have as many students running on the track in the event as I have instructors available to put in the cars. So if you sign up and don't pay, no slot is being reserved for you at that time until you pay. If I have a wait list for students waiting for instructors to sign up, the first person off the wait list to get in is the person who paid first. So if you sign up on March 1st and don't pay till April 15th, anybody that signed up between the 1st and the 15th that paid already is going to get in front of you. If you sign up and pay and go on the wait list, and for whatever reason do not get in, you'll get a full refund of your registration fee, so you're not risking any money. We did really well the last couple of years. I think we have been able to get in 100% of our green and yellow drivers, partially because we have a few instructors who will take 2 students, one in green and one in yellow, that works. And partially because our record for getting instructors to sign up has been better in the last couple of years than it was a few years before that. So we've been doing really well. But don't worry if you do sit on the wait list for a little bit, as long as you pay. If you look at your status and it says pending, you might say wait, it might say confirmed, means you're in the event. It might say wait list, means you paid and you're just waiting for an instructor. If it says pending, that means that I don't think you paid and you're not reserved a slot, and you're not going to get a reserved slot until you pay. If you see pending, and it's been a couple of days since you registered, so I go in almost every night and go through the events, check with me and say, boy, I'm sure I paid. Because once in a great while, Club Reg will carry you as not paid But then if I scroll down and look, I say, oh, he did pay, or she did pay. All right? So just ping me, and I'll get back to you and let you know what's going on.
And you talk about long-term loan registration there, because that's a little big.
Yes, okay. So last couple of years have been really good for registrations. We've had events that fill up. 2 events in particular fill up pretty quickly. One is Watkins Glen, very popular track, one of the best lake tracks in the country. Watkins Glen, registration is open now, right? So if you're thinking about going to Watkins Glen and you're going to be green and yellow, sign up and pay. Mont Tremblant. Issue with Mont Tremblant is the track only lets us put 30 cars on the track at a time, even though the track's long enough that by PCA guidelines it can hold more. They limit it to 30 to keep the noise level down, so they don't get the people in town irritated. 30 cars, 5 run groups, 150 drivers, that's it. You can't let in any more than 150 drivers because they can't get on the track. Last year, it sold out in like a day and a half or 2 days. Registration for Mont Blanc opens on March 15th at Eastern time, I think like 1 a.m. Central, it says midnight, but it's Central time, so they're always. So if you're thinking about going to Mont Blanc, register. If you don't get registered and paid in time to get in, you'll go on the wait list. Now, because it's so popular, so many people register right off the bat to get in. What happens every year is we get people that when it gets closer to the event, they go, oh darn, I can't go. So they'll cancel. When they cancel, somebody off the wait list in that run group gets in. And there'll be, I'm going to guess last year, there were 40 to 50 cancellations. So if you're thinking about going and it's already full, register and pay, get on the wait list, and there's a pretty good chance you'll get a yes.
How does it work with the weather? Do you run in the rain?
Yep.
Yeah.
The only time that we won't run in the rain, and I've been once where we did this, is if the track says it's not safe.
Lightning.
And that's typically what happens. If there's too much lightning, if we're at Watkins Glen and they've got lightning in the area, all those flaggers are in metal cages. It's not a Faraday cage. it's a lightning rod. So what they've done, they've shut the track down for periods of time. 2 years ago in Thompson, it rained so hard that the front straight, you could have rode down, let alone you couldn't ride. So we closed an event last day of the event. We shut it down a couple hours early because it was just so wet, and it was still raining and it wasn't drying out. The water wasn't running out.
It wasn't going to stop.
It wasn't going to stop. If something was to happen, and the rules are on our website or in the information that you'll see when you go in and register, there's rules about what we do if the event never starts and so on as far as refunds are concerned. If we start an event and you decided not to come because the weather was crappy, you're probably not going to get a refund. And we will review those things on a case-by-case basis between me as the registrar, track chairs, and the chief instructor, and decide sometimes we'll give you a partial refund, sometimes we may give you a credit for a future event, that kind of thing.
I might also just mention that driving on the track in the rain is a great experience, a way to learn good car control. So that's one of the reasons why we don't want people and beginners on with race tires, which you can't drive in the rain. Great experience driving around the track.
A couple other things on registration and payment. We've already talked about pre-event tech inspections. Long pants and long sleeve shirts are required. Non-synthetic materials. Don't use nylon or something like that. If by chance fire was to happen, it's just going to weld itself to your skin. So cotton or something like that, a natural fiber. We talked about shoes already. If you use running shoes, please don't. They typically have a really wide sole, which if you're trying to get on the brake pedal, will catch the accelerator, or trying to get on the clutch and catch the brake. Don't do that. It says eat lightly. I guess that's up to everybody as to what they consider lightly, but very essential, stay hydrated. Drink plenty of water or fluids of that type. Getting dehydrated on the track leads to making bad decisions and mistakes, so stay hydrated. Even on days where it's cool out and you think, oh, it's nice and cool, I feel just fine. You want to stay hydrated and drink water.
There's no warning before you become dehydrated.
Yeah.
You only know it when you are dehydrated.
And at that point, you probably don't know it because you're dehydrated.
Rule of thumb, if you're not peeing between blood groups, you're dehydrated. Bear that in mind. You need to have a lot of water.
And one last thing on...
I have to say it. That's it.
One last thing on registrations. When you create your profile in Club Reg and put in your name and your address and your birth date and your track experience, and please enter your club affiliation. If you do that, it helps me because Club Reg goes out and pings like PCA National and gets a thing back that says, yep, that person's registration is good and current. So that helps me. When you do the registration and you do your profile, make sure you put your car in your profile. If you've got multiple cars, so you might bring this, that, or the other one from time to time, put the various cars that you might bring. You'll be able to select them. You can do a little bit of a search to try to pick a car number that nobody else is using, or you can put a number in, and I'll let you know if somebody's already got it, especially if somebody's already using that number at that event and in the same run group and in the same kind of car. So we'll have somebody, one of you, change your number. But critical, because of the way we're now doing our online driver education evaluations, you must have a unique email address. So if a father and a son are signing up for an event, and the father creates a Club Reg account profile for his son, and goes, well, listen, Luigi, I'll just put my email address in for both of us, and that way I'll see all the emails. Don't do that, because if you do that, driver's evaluation will pick up and not let one of the two of you get evaluations either written on you or allowing you to write evaluations. So everybody needs to have a unique email address. It should be an actual current email address you check, because we send out a lot of event information, including the track rats package, student instructor assignments, work assignments, and so on and so on, by email through Club Reg, so we get all that. Okay?
One thing on the numbers too, through Club Reg, you can buy relatively inexpensive single-use numbering systems. Otherwise, you're blue painter's tape, and you try to make a 2 with blue painter's tape, and that's so easy, and that can kill off or something. So Club Reg, I think like $30 or something.
Yeah, and they're 10 inches high.
Yeah,
so they're good visible.
Yeah, they're good and visible,
Yeah.
and they're cheap enough, and sometimes you can get a couple uses out of them, but that's just one of those things where I try to make numbers out of painter's tapes.
And remember, again this year, numbers on left and right and the rear of the car. Yes?
Do the magnetic numbers, they sound good in theory, do they actually stay on?
I have a 06 Cayman S. The only thing I do, I put the magnetic number on, and I put a piece of tape on the leading edge so the wind can't get under it, and pop them off. Do that, I've never lost one.
I have a magnetic set on my Boxster, good size ones, and
But he goes slow.
yeah. I'm not doing cheap shit, so yeah, exactly. We're gonna get top speeds 30 miles an hour.
Stan can walk faster.
Not anymore. I'm getting old.
Dave, you want to come up and?
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything left. Just go quickly on it. So again, we have different run groups, beginners, first time at the track, you're in green. You're probably staying green, depending on your level of advancement. Anywhere between 3 or 4 events, maybe a year, depending on how often you come. And again, people advance at their own pace. There's certainly some people that come to the track regularly that are running in green still or running in yellow. Again, it just depends on you and how fast you advance. And it's fine. You know, you're having fun, and you've been coming to track for 20 years, and you're driving in green. It's great. You know, it's all about having fun.
Talk about the relationship between the student and the instructor.
Yeah. So one of my jobs is to pair up students and instructors. Typically, I look at what kind of car you have. Maybe if you're driving an older car, for example, I'll probably pair you up with an instructor that drives an older car to start with. Sometimes, you know, we'll pair up by gender. If there's a woman driving, maybe she's more comfortable with a woman instructor. So we try to do that. For all the young people, of course, I get the older guys.
Us older guys. It's okay. I take some women.
So we try to do something reasonable. We also try to switch up pairings to make sure that you get a variety. Different instructors teach different ways. And to that point, sometimes you get an instructor that you and that person don't click for whatever reason. And if that's the case, you just come up during the event and say, hey, you know, I'm not having a good time. This is why. We'll talk about it, and we'll switch up instructors. Doesn't happen very often, but it has happened before. If it does, no big deal. So again, we want to go far out of our way to make sure that everyone's having a good time. And certainly, in the beginning, that means you're with somebody who you're enjoying the time with. And the types of problems, you know, sometimes maybe the student is more aggressive, and maybe the instructor is less so, and sometimes it's the opposite way around, where the instructor might be saying, you know, faster, and the student's not comfortable with it. So, anyways, it's communication between the two and what everyone's comfortable with. And again, it's my job to do it, so I spend a lot of time looking over carefully who I want to pair people up with, and look back historically who they've been with. Stan alluded to it, but when we have drivers' evaluations after every event, it goes both ways. The student evaluates the instructor, and the instructor evaluates the student. I have the whole history there. I might look back and I might see that a student got along very well with one instructor, and I know that instructor, I know that's his personality. Maybe I'll look for somebody with a similar personality next time. We do give you the same instructor for an entire event. Again, as long as there's no issue between the two of you, it's important to have some consistency over the time. For a 3-day event, you know, your instructor's telling you what to do. You want the consistency of that. Every run you go out with, the guy knows beforehand what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and can build on that. Different instructors teach different ways. Different instructors maybe have a different line around the track. So the last thing you want to do is have someone who's a beginner, have someone different jumping into your car and telling them something. So try to keep the same person in the car for the whole event. So we mix it up on different events. And even when you become a solo driver, again, whether you have 6 months or 2 years or 20 events, 30 events, whatever it is, when you do become a solo driver, the club goes out of their way to try to pair up instructors to go along with people that drive by themselves. So they learn different things, they're picking up bad habits, instructor is selected, and that goes through all levels. And someone who is in blue, which is the first level of non-instructed, that we'll do at an event, we'll pair somebody up regularly. And we encourage the students to come and ask instructors that maybe they've worked with before to come out with them. But even in the higher run groups, black, red, whatever, we want people to go out with others. I certainly take people out with when I go out sometimes and ask them what I'm doing wrong and give some pointers. So.
And I'm happy to do so.
I think that's all I have.
Exactly.
Just I'm curious in terms of cars people have. Is anyone here, do they come to the track with a car that's older than 1990, for example? What do you have?
72.
72.
Modified.
Okay. Modified in what way?
Suspension, seating, harnesses, engine.
I have a 71.
No, I've got 2 engines.
What's that?
I have 2 engines. I have 2 engines.
I have a 1990.
I'm only running 40 ideas.
Interesting. Talk about it.
Just quick, so the total rookie is 93, 97. It's Ari. So I was like, you know, it's had a little flavor or taste out of Palmer, just a couple laps was last. I don't know if the car's really set for this. Sure.
Again, for 5 years, Kristen and I drove a originally an 83, but then we switched to an 85. Mostly stock car. I mean, I did almost nothing to it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Great track car. I guarantee you, 993, 997 stock form, whatever. Perfect track car. You don't need to do almost anything to the car to bring it out on the track. And even as you advance, the car in a base form performs great. So again, a lot of talk about harnesses and Haas devices and all this kind of stuff. I believe almost everybody here said they're a stock car. How many people have been on the track before? Couple. And everyone who hasn't, again, I assume that you're coming out with stock seatbelts, stock seats, and everything like that. You don't need to do anything to the car. Just have a safety inspection, make sure it's in good shape. That's all you really need to do. All you need is a helmet. I would encourage everybody, I think they come stock with it, but get the Hans device post, like he said. I think they have all helmets. I believe I asked him earlier, anything 2015 about come automatically with it. The only reason why I say that is so that if, for example, Chris and I are instructing somebody, we want to come out in our car, and we want you to come out in our car, kind of show you how we're driving at a pace that's applicable to you. In order to get in our car, which has harnesses, and we'll supply a Hans device, you just need to have the post in the helmet. So,
As long as one of us is not in the car.
yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. They are, take a look at the website and look at the rules. Different tracks have different rules about that. And based on the years, if you have, I believe that the Targa, for example, without any kind of rollover protection, I believe at Lime Rock, you might have a problem. Just look at the website, it's pretty detailed on what you can and can't do. Things like Boxsters, there's no problem with Targa. Okay. I'm sorry. You said Targa. No problem. I meant to say Cabriolet. Yeah, you have no problem with the Targa. Well, you have to keep your top on.
Sure, so,
I have the hard top with the Monster. Recommend it to the hard top for the events or just come to soft top? Does it make any difference?
It's perfectly fine. For safety purposes, I think I would put the hard top on, but maybe a little safer, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do.
And you won't be able to drive the top down. I think, unless you.
Unless you down, if you have a leg, you need arm restraints. There's a couple of things to pay attention to.
Dave, will you talk about Lime Rock?
Yeah.
And the rollover?
Yeah, do you know the specific?
Yeah, I just had a talk with them. They are going soft on their requirement that you have to have a fixed roll bar. But I don't really, I don't have a good feeling about it right now. So anybody with a cab either shows up with a factory authorized hardtop or a fixed roll bar in place. Anything pre 996 has to have it fixed. And 996 on, the other guys have a problem.
Yeah. Sorry.
Stock brake fluid, fine.
So, yeah. So I want to say again, take your car as it is to the track. Get your tech inspection. You don't need to do anything to the car. Depending on how many events you're doing and if you're picking up speed and things like that, you say what are the first type of things that I might look to upgrade in my car? It might be brake pads and brake fluid. And by the way, if you're changing your brake fluid or bleeding it regularly like you need to do anyways, the cost of a racing brake fluid versus a street brake fluid is almost nothing.
I don't know how it applies, but I was going to start watching it, and there were some tracks that had the blue stick test, so they had to put a blue stick between the windshield. So that might, for some people, tall people are going to need a roll bar extended, right? Because I was looking at that and wasn't sure how short it's going to be. So I don't know if that applies.
Yes, absolutely does.
People with washers may want to know.
Especially if it's obvious because you're running the top down. and it's pretty easy to see that straight line is dented in from your helmet. The roll bar extender. And it's all about the safety. We don't want to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt. So we follow the rules.
I have a boxer that I track and I put seats and harnesses in, and because of that, I got raised up just a little bit. So I just went out and bought Brain Krause makes a roll bar extender, which gives you an extra 2.5 inches. It's not cheap, but it's short insurance.
So the rule is like the broomstick test means if you put a broomstick across the top between the windshield and the back, your head has to be below it. So if you, God forbid, flip over, your head is not going to get hit first. I don't have that problem. You know, if you're 6'5", you might have a problem.
Yeah, with the Boxster, with the helmet on, even with the stock seats and everything, I was right at that limit. I'm 6 foot tall, so when sitting in the car, it's not a problem. And you put that helmet on, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've added that extra couple inches, and you're right at the limit. So.
Good. Let me add something. We mentioned arm restraints if you're running with the top down. If you're in green or yellow, or if you're in an upper run group and think you're going to take an instructor with you, do yourself a favor, bring a set of arm restraints that your instructor can use. Most instructors don't have a set because they don't drive revolutions.
An arm restraint is just a way you put a, especially a strap around your elbows, and you attach to your harness so that if you did flip over, your arms stay inside the car and don't get caught outside the car. Anything else?
I just want to, before we almost done? Almost.
I'm done.
Okay, so before we close out, while I'm still thinking of it, getting a little old, so sometimes things come in and go out. So if they don't get rejected, you're lost forever. Our first event is at Thompson in May. It's a 3-day event. Friday is Novice Day, or Green Run Group novices. Includes, in addition to driving on the track, it includes car control exercises. We typically do a wet skin pad, and we do brake and turn exercises down in the lower paddock. That's included in the cost of going to the event on Friday. We also have a little bit more extensive classroom sessions on Friday for the green drivers. If we get enough, we actually break it up into green A and green B on Friday. You do get track time, but you get the additional instruction if you've never set your car sideways and don't know what that feels like. The skid pad is a great way to learn. For those who are outside of green and yellow, we do think we're going to have the Mazdas that the driver, that the pro coach uses at Lime Rock at Thompson, so that in the afternoon, anybody that wants to will be able to go down and get a little practice on the skid pad. Now, the reason we bring the Mazdas, if you've got one of the newer Porsches, it doesn't like to let you go sideways. So a Mazda or an early Porsche, you can put sideways. So we bring the Mazda so everybody gets a chance. Yes?
But are all the events multi-day? If you're on the green run group, is each day have a, you know what I'm saying? Do you go each day? How does that work?
Okay, so the novice day, the Friday at Thompson, has extra activities for the novices. All of the rest of our events are 3-day events. They all have a novice classroom at the beginning of the day, every day. And in some cases, we may have a class like at lunchtime or later during the event. Most of the events will also have classroom sessions for the advanced drivers. The only day that green, yellow, and blue cannot run is the Friday at the June Palmer event. Because that event is our one advanced day of the year, white, black, and red only on Friday at Palmer in June. I think it's like June 6th or something. I don't know. So every other day is a full DE for all runners.
Do you have to attend all 3 days?
No, you can do 1 day, 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, you can sign up for free, any 2 or any 1. With the exception of Calabogie, where because we're limiting the number of people that can go and charging a little bit extra, we are not allowing 1-day registrations. If you want to go to Calabogie for just 1 day, you have to register and pay for 2, and if you don't show up the second day, that's on you.
You're going all the way to Calabogie, but
Yeah.
we'll do the three.
Calabogie again, we get mostly solo drivers. We do get some greens and yellows. The thing with Calabogie is we will have a bunch of pro coaches there, 2 or 3, plus our instructors, and because we're limiting the number of people, instead of getting 2.5 hours of track time, around 2 hours or a little more each day, you're probably going to get somewhere between 4 to 6 hours of track time each day, with lots of instruction, lots of opportunities to have pro coaches in the car with you, lots of opportunities to review data, lots of opportunities to have some of our senior instructors in the car with you. I mean, if you want to OD on driving on track, that's the event to go to.
I did it last year. It was, and I went from, that's why I got advanced to solo driving, and I went from yellow that from yellow to blue. It was more track time than I could deal with, and beautiful track, 22 turns. It says very technical, so but the pro instructors that they bring so these guys, one guy raced for 100
Yeah, and at Calabogie, and I missed it last year because my car broke at Watkins Glen right before it. There's an option for catered food that's $20 a day. It includes breakfast, lunch, and beer in the evening while you're debriefing with the pro coaches and stuff like that. And some of the pro coaches will station themselves around the track, and they may have feedback for you even though they haven't been in your car. So if you sign up for Calabogie, I highly recommend that you also sign up for the optional catered food each day that you're going to be there. Yeah.
Track insurance.
Very good. Good question. It isn't in the.
No, we left it out intentionally.
So I started doing this in late '07. I never bought crack insurance probably until 2010. I've been doing this for 12 years now. I've seen a handful of either car-to-car or car-to-object incidents. If you have a car that's registered on the street and you have automobile insurance, and I can point you to a couple of people, as long as you don't lie about it in the beginning, tell the people I was at such and such a track doing an education event, not a race, there's at least a good chance that your insurance covers you, unless you look at the policy and it specifically excludes any activity on track of any kind. If it was a race, you wouldn't be covered. But what we're doing is not racing. We make that point very strongly. There was a guy at Club Motorsports last year who seriously bent up his car in the W class. Yeah. Anyway, he came and asked me about it. I said, well, I'll tell him it happened on the street. He said, no. If you lie about it, it's insurance fraud. You will not get any claim, and you might get prosecuted for insurance fraud. So he took my advice, fessed up, said what it was, and we paid for it. So the rumor that they will never pay for it is not true. And I think maybe some insurance companies are better or require less convincing than others. But
Look at your policy.
yeah, look at
Read your policy very carefully.
Ask your insurance agent if you have one.
Read your policy. Don't ask anybody.
So is there fuel available at the sites?
Most tracks have fuel available. Montreal does not. Calabogie does. Palmer does, but it comes out of a fuel truck right now, so you have to have one of the guys at Palmer put it in. Thompson has fuel trucks, has fuel tanks run by credit card. I think that's where Calabogie's works too, but I don't remember for sure. It's been a couple of years.
Calabogie pumps with your
Yeah. Lime Rock, credit card, they have fuel available, credit cards. And Watkins Glen has fuel not all the tracks that have fuel available have race fuel. You have a dedicated track car and you're using race fuel.
But one other question, you mentioned the brake bleed before each event and the brake flush once a year. If you do your own stuff, I do, how do you, so you gotta get it bled at the inspection station, or what if you do it at your own regular mechanic and he gives you a receipt and I hand it to the inspection station, will that cover as well?
Yep.
Okay.
If you do it, you go to get a tech inspection and you say, I just bled it, you say, okay.
Okay.
You don't have to get
Dave,
any
Dave
proof
was
of
our
it.
mark.
You don't have to prove it.
Yeah, because I mean, I got my little minivac and I go to town and
What if the car's brand new? If the car's brand new, do you need to get the brakes bled?
I don't care if you just took delivery.
Okay.
You might want to break it in a little bit first, but
Well, I still have to do that.
We want a tech form properly filled out by a tech inspection station, whether it be an independent shop or the dealer.
But, and that includes flushing the brakes?
If they sign off, if the car is brand new and they sign off that the brakes have been flushed, I'm not going to disbelieve it. There are a number of organizations,
More of a brake bleed, not full flush.
including Hooked on Driving and a couple others, that are some significantly more expensive than what we are, who allow self-tech, we do not, and who allow one tech for the year, we do not, because it is all about the same thing. If there's two guiding principles in what we're doing, PCA high performance driver education, and they're kind of co-equal but not quite. Safety is number one, and 1A is fun. Because none of us would be doing this if it wasn't fun. Okay.
So I want to start wrapping this up quickly. I'd like Kristen Larson to come up. The instructors at NER are the heart of our driver's education. Kristen is in charge of instructor. So I'd like her to explain what does an instructor go through? Become an instructor.
So as you move up in the run groups, eventually you're going to get into black, and you're someone who is interested in becoming an instructor. You come talk to myself. You come talk to Ollie, who is my counterpart at NCR, and we'll go for a ride with you. We have a program in place that goes through wording, and we go out and do tests with other instructors, maybe put them out with some blue and white drivers to get them comfortable. Our goal is to try to have as much as we possibly can of having some similarities, so when you go from instructor to instructor to instructor, that the terminology is similar, that everything is relatively similar. The personalities are going to be different, but it's going to be relatively similar as to what you're doing on the track with the person in the right seat. We have similar programs between NER, NCR, and NNJR. All three clubs have a very similar philosophy on who can become an instructor and what the instructor should be doing in our review. It's really helping you to get around the track first safely, and then as long as the safety is staying in place, we're adding speed, we're adding different skills as you and the car are going through the track. And that's probably the big thing. I do, as the female token driver that's here, glad to see some women here, first of all. But I want to make the point that this is not a men's sport. Dave and I started driving at the same time together. So, for anybody who's thinking maybe their spouse wants to come do this, bring them out. It's like we've talked about, it's easy to have a co-driver. They talked about a friend or a child. A spouse is one of those. Is bring them, have them try it, and you never know. And if in doubt, have me talk to your spouse. I learned this from my mom, who drove the track for many years. Is you stay the good guy, let me be the bad person, force him to come try it. But then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. So that's sort of what I wanted to say.
I'd like Dennis and Dave to come up. as co-chairs of North Country.
Actually, Dave is he's our chief instructor.
Yeah.
My name's Dennis Masetta. I'm the track chair for NCR this coming season, sister club of NER. We're trying to bring the clubs pretty much in harmony so that when you come to our event or their event, you'll see the same faces, you'll see the same instructors, you'll see the same cars. We have the same philosophy, and you'll see our schedule, whether you come to our site or NER site, you'll see the schedules and try to find something that works for you. We don't go to the same tracks, we go to different tracks than NER does, so that makes it a little bit better for you guys to have a variety. If that's what you like, or just timing-wise, depending on when the events are. And I also want to introduce myself, so after the formal part of this is over, and for any of the people you see standing up here, if anybody has any questions, you want to talk to somebody one-on-one, raise your hand, said it, please come over and start a conversation, ask whatever you want to ask, whatever might be, might be a silly question, might not be a silly question, so don't be afraid to ask. Better to ask now.
Don't leave without having a question answered, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all approachable, right? So we're all out there to have a good time. We're from the North Country group, but you know what? We're all friends, and we've grown up together. Doing the sport, so it's a lot of fun. We enjoy each other. We enjoy each other on the track. Socially.
If this hasn't been said already, you'll make some of the best friends you'll ever make in your life doing this activity.
All over Maine, New Hampshire, Mass.
You'll make some great friends if you pick up.
Well, we got one from one too. But yeah, absolutely.
Question for Dennis.
Yes.
Stan talked about the urgency of signing up for Watkins Glen.
Yes.
And I see you have a couple of events up in Tamworth. Same kind of pressure?
The first 3-day event at Tamworth in September is drawing a lot of attention. So
is it open for registration now?
It is open for registration now, but if you're thinking you want to go to that event, wait.
Tamworth's a ball. It's close. It's a really nice track. So yeah, absolutely. If you guys are considering it, being yellow and green, you want to sign up for it.
It's a great track. It's
a lot
new
of fun.
track. The paved track area itself is 40 feet wide. Runoff almost everywhere. It's on the side of a mountain.
And it flows.
Terrain.
It flows. It's so nice. So you'll have a ball out there.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One of the things when they talk about events, last year we did another thing called Vintage Days, which were people like myself, I have 2,000 box arrests. So you do a regular event at Watkins Glen, you're surrounded by trees and tree yards. It is. But now you go to some of these events and there's some people new, high-powered fast cars, and if you have a car that's 2,000 or older, you got maybe 250 horsepower, and you spend a lot of time doing play-bys. So you might, if you remember the car, take a look at the some schedules and out yet. But I know we're going to do a 2-day event. There's a 1-day event in August that we do up at New Hampshire, junction with NCR, and there's going to be another 1-day event somewhere that we haven't determined yet. But you have 2,000. There's parameters in there. Basically, 2,000 or older, and you go out, and so you put cars that are in the same general range, so it's not quite as.
You won't be pointing everywhere.
Exactly. You're not driving one-handed. Sometimes it's a different land. They spend more time with mine on the window than on the wheel. It's they're really good events. They're smaller, and the nice thing about that is that usually after lunch they sort of mixed run groups, and you get a lot more track time. So it's if you have that open car, it's definitely something to look into.
And we, unlike when we first started last year, in case your minds partway through, we do offer instruction at the vintage events. So if you've never done this before, or you're in green or yellow and directly east, you can come to a vintage event. The last 2 pages on your books have the track standards. You do have a quick administrative thing to go through.
Just to, since I probably missed some people who are coming in, Kevin Donaldson, are you here? Joe Flaherty? Tim McCarthy?
Yeah.
Shannon Mead? Is this your, and just check with me, I'll get you. James Miller? Paul Musto? Ed Pastor? Good. Alan Cecil? Is that right? Cecil. William Spalding? Sean Utke? Did I get that right?
That's pretty good.
It was a guess. Rob White. Good. All right. So that's not bad. I had like 3 no-shows and 2 of them I already knew about. All right.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Hopefully, we've piqued your interest even more. And go right out and register. Any questions? Want to continue the conversation while we're here? That's great. Email's very easy. Just don't be afraid to ask questions. There are no foolish questions. Just the one that's not asked. And hopefully we'll see you on the track. This juice pizza.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.